this lecture will be part 2 of week 12. So in addition to the previous lecture that I just gave you a few days ago. So we need a couple of issues to complete the topic. Okay, so my topic today is mainly on monarchy resurgent. And then we look at political ideologies that occur during a Soviet regime. So in the late 1940s, we saw signs of revival of the Thai monarchy again. So in December 1945, Prince Thani Niwat, so he should be half brother of King Vacharavut Raman VI and VII, okay, because his father was son of King Mongkut Raman IV. Okay. So Prince Thani went to study in London, and he was the only prince that studied what we call Orientalism, about something like Southeast Asian study nowadays, okay, Oriental study. Okay. So quite new, you know, especially for Siam, you know, most princes went to study military, okay. So he don't want to study something on the arts, which is the Orientalism, okay. But then he gonna come back to make good use of his knowledge about Eastern societies and culture, okay. So in 1945, so this is when King Rama VIII, King Anand, came back to visit briefly before he planned to go back, okay, but he never did. Okay? So in the audience of the king, okay, so Prince Thani, you know, lecture on the topic that never been discussed before, because King Rama VII Pachatipak abdicated, okay, and it looked like, you know, it's decline of the kingship in Siam, okay. But after the idea that the government under PD, you know, gonna support, you know, comeback of the monarchy, you know, for the future. So Prince Thani invited to give lecture to the kings, and together, you know, his brother, the next king Bhumibol. The topic was Siamese kingship, the concept of Siamese kingship. Okay. So basically, the idea that Prince Thani explained, you know, quite long, you know, but I will give you the article to read, you know. But his argument is that kingship always, you know, the form of government in Thai history, starting from Sukhothai, which was the first Thai city-state in the 14th century. And Sukhothai already adopted what we call Dhamma Raja, the Buddhist righteous king, okay? So according to the Tipitaka, the Pattai Pido, this is the text, Buddhist text, okay, of the Buddhist teachings, okay? There was a concept that the Lord Buddha, you know, explained that the origin of kingship in every city, empire, you know, came by election of the people in that community, okay? So every king had to pass some kind of electoral process, okay? So because of that election, which to explain, it's not election in a modern sense. This is a kind of the communal gathering, you know, and then, you know, choosing, you know, among the elders that who should be the best, you know, leader, okay? So it's not the private, free, you know, election by everyone. No, it's still among the elders, okay? Anyway, So that's what first he justified that the Sukhothai king, also came through election. By election, justify, the king, as righteousness. Okay, so that's the virtue of that election, make the king, righteous. Okay, and then the king or the monarch, became the protector of people, of the whole people in that kingdom or that city, and also Buddhism, because we're talking about the community that most people are Buddhist. Okay. Now the next point that Prince Thani, lectured was he criticized the so-called concept of constitution, which is mostly we borrow from Western practice. So he said, this kind of Western constitutions are not pure, they are foreign conception of constitution of government. So there is no place in Thai tradition to practice Western constitution. Okay, that's interesting, So what is the backdrop, background, allow Prince Thani, to criticize, constitutional rule. Okay, so he already, look at, what happened in 1932. The People's Party overthrew the monarchy and brought the so-called constitutional concept of democracy, to Siam. And the government has some kind of problem, okay? So that's why the prince, criticized that, look, because the way that Western constitution works, is not very Thai. So it's against Thai way of tradition and thinking. Okay, that's why it's not going to work. Okay. Okay, he continued to lecture that the king has what we call inherent morality. That means a highly, moral person inside the king. Okay, and wisdom, intellect. So, with morality and wisdom, allow the king to be the true source of law. Okay, if you know Thai history, you know that the king was able to issue law by himself. He doesn't need to consult or to pass to the council or anything. So the king's word is law. Okay, so he justified, because of his morality and wisdom. Okay, so when you compare with the modern representation, the representative of the people are elected individually by certain groups of people, and they do not represent the whole people. Now we compare with MP, member of parliament, then he will say that the modern representatives, they just represent a group of people that elect them. So each MP or all MP put together in the parliament does not amount to the whole representation of the whole people. Okay, sounds logical, right? But he said, look at the king. The king can rule all over everybody because he is the one source of power, and so the king is the real representative of the whole people. Okay. Now, next, we'll see from then, a new version of monarchy began to happen by having more rituals, restore, and revive, old traditions and ceremonies that been terminated after the revolution in 1932. Okay, now it's time to revive, okay. So this new version of monarchy will see interactions of the king with groups of subjects. Okay, From now on, we'll see more receptions for high officials. The king visit to military camps, meeting Muslims and Chinese leaders, give a talk on radio, went into countryside to meet people gradually, okay? And so this kind of practice sharply different from the old monarchy during 19th century, like King Mongkut or King Chulalongkorn, that was the time that monarchy was westernized, became like a modern form of monarchy, but at the same time, also distance from the people. Okay, so not going to see people or whatever we saw it today. Okay, but so after the king, Rama VIII, went into accident, so came the new king, and King Ramadan IX, spent time back to study, in Europe before came back in 1952. Okay, from then, the king had limited activities under people government because the two visions of politics and the Thai state not exactly the same. Okay, but after Pibun was overthrown by Salit, the king quickly approved Salit's coup and received great support from Salit regime of government because now they're going to make the king and nation are one and indivisible. So this is new development in Thai politics. Okay, but because in 1932, the king has no power. Okay, so, and the nation is based on the popular, election. Okay, so there is no king and nation as one thing. Okay, the two separate. Okay, the king is above politics, but here, this is the time that the two entities came to join, became one, and even indivisible. That means, criticize one, affected the others. So make it secure, for the nation and the king. Okay. And the next thing, was that so it will revoke the Land Act under Pibun. Okay. Because people wanted to improve economy and production. So one way, is to give lands to farmers or to people who want to cultivate your farms, your agriculture, your rice or your fruits or anything, If you own your land, you have incentive, to make it better. Okay, so in order to improve, this is the Western idea of improvement. Okay, you give ownership, give the right to the people who want to do the job instead of force them or just convince them, you do good and then you get reward next life, that doesn't work that much. People want to see the result of now. Okay, so that's why this idea is to try to distribute lands, equally or fairly, to the farmers or to people, working people. So if this law comes into effect, that means those who hold lands more than they need, which is what called landlords. Okay, and the one person who owned the most land in the country was the king. Okay, under the Crown Property Bureau. Okay, ทรัพย์สินส่วนพระมหากษัตริย์. Okay, so Crown Property already, under 1932 people government, they already, transfer, the property, under the finance ministry. Okay, and then after the coup 1947, the Democrat government tried to return, the ownership back to the crown property again. So people will still hold on to power as the prime minister. So he tried to negotiate, push for land reform. Okay, so at least they can make, even though the crowd and the rich persons still own more land, but at least some of them could be distributed to the farmers. Anyway, so sorry, when he got power, the very first thing to do is to revoke, to make it disappear, the Land Reform Act. Okay, so since then, until now, there is no land, the real land reform. Okay? Even though we have land reform department now, the government give some parts of land, to the farmers every year, 10, 20 rights or something, but that's not the real land reform. Okay, it's just the government pick up some land, wasteland, and then invited people to come in and then give the ownership. Okay, they don't go after the landlords. Okay, and then so the government will shift, before the national day, was June 21st, because that was the day that revolution happened and changed the system of government, from monarchy to constitutional monarchy. So June 24th was National Day. Okay. So under Sri, he replaced June 24th with December 5th. December 5th was King Bhumipon's birthday. Okay. So since then, we still have December 5th as our National Day. Okay. And so we also want to make this idea that, okay, the ruler of the land is the head of that big family, and all people are his children. Okay. Now we heard that the one time, Sri also made himself to be the father of the people. As the government is a father. Okay. So he the head of the government, so he head of the father. Okay. But now he also said, the ruler, has authority, is the head, okay, of that big family, because the people are his children. Okay. Now we come to this concept, which is the newly, discussed, but during the time, we never had this concept. Okay, it's very new. Okay, we call network monarchy. Okay, network means like a connections of people, by the family names or by schools or by years or by land or by province or whatever, Okay, so network means you have someone or something becomes the center, and the rest will circle around the center. Okay, the rings around the center, or crisscross, whatever, you work it. But here, network monarchy means the monarchy is the center on connections. Okay. So because of after Sri promote the king, give him many activities, give the funding, give the budget, give the manpower, give the office, give everything, and could. So now the role of the monarchy increased, expanded into many areas. Okay. Now he visit all provinces in the country, down to the villages. Okay, especially places that have some kind of problems. And the biggest problem at that time under Sri was communism. So always the north and northeast that border Laos and Cambodia, which have the communist insurgent, fighting against French and American troops there. Okay, so the Thai armies also send out troops, to guard the borders and fight against, any, penetrating, communists, which they finally they came. They not came from outside, but actually they happened inside Thailand. Okay, as a reaction, against the government suppressive, method. Okay. So visit by the king to those areas, So not only inside the country, the king also visited overseas. Okay. So he visited many countries, especially European countries, because that was a period that America want Thailand to be the symbol of freedom, liberal democracy. Okay, follow America, and then you follow the good people. So they promote the king, to go, like to tell the European world, that this is how, the underdeveloped country, able to, become the modernized, progress, and look at them, they look beautiful. Okay, yeah. So the trip, when, including America, to Europe and many countries and Japan and Quebec, okay. Yeah. The king also resumed many religious ceremonies like Thot Katin, the Buddhist after the Lent. Then you have the ceremony, offering clothes to the monks, okay, and the robes, obviously robes to the monks. And important one was the old royal barge procession. Okay, so the king can go by boat or by land. Okay, once a year or couple years. This big ceremony, and plowing ceremony. Beginning the farming season. Okay. The next is U.S. contributed by reproducing pictures of the king for distribution all over the country. So if you go to anywhere in Thailand, down to the small village, into the villager's home, in the center of the house, everywhere, you will see picture of the king hanging. Okay. So this practice started with American, contribution by printing, reproducing, tons, 100,000 of pictures of the king, to distribute all over the country. Okay. Okay, so this is the idea of behind this, the rising monarchy. So he became a unifying authority around which all elements of the nation can rally. Okay, so the king is really a center, not only a center, but it's also unify, everyone. Okay, allow him. Okay, so this network, became powerful. Okay, because most important, powerful people, we come together, okay, to rally around the monarchy. Look at the jobs of the king, very busy. The functions, ceremonies, audiences, tons of diplomats, ambassadors, okay, chairman, president of companies, foundations, good students, awarding the scholarship to students, including, degree handling. Okay, the king started giving degrees to students. Okay, from the beginning, 100 functions a year, moved to 600 in 1970. So maybe 1,000, at least in 1990s. Okay, but next thing you see, for the Thai to be promoted as upper class or as honor people, you have to have royal decorations. Okay, this is the highest thing that common people can have. Including government of officers, government automatically you serve how many years you will get certain royal decorations from the bottom down to the high ranking decorations. Okay. Then the government expand, royal decoration, from giving to officers, government bureaucrats, to give to private citizens, give to business people. Okay. But for business people to get royal decoration, you have to donate millions of baht to the royal project or loyal activities. Okay, so at one time it became the big business. Okay, someone get money fake the decoration to give in order to get money from the business people. Okay, yeah. So next one, the important thing that made the King Rama IX very popular, among the people were his royal development projects. Okay, so he has his advisors and experts on the public health, agriculture, scientific, education, school, languages, anything that the king looked what they needed for this area, this district or villages, and then he will build, the so-called project called the Royal Project. Royal projects on, cotton, on, mangoes, on cherry blossom, on fruits, on water, drinking, or on you can buy in the market now. The produce made by the royal, industry became a big industry by now. Okay, so that started from the King Royal Projects. Okay, and it always make benefits because the capital, the budget that used in this project came from government budget. So it never get lost. Okay, you always make the benefit because you can increase your budget every year. Okay. So next we're going to move to another story, kind of famous, the making famous in history, in the memory of people, was his economic development plans. So it was the first government that started the so-called 5 years economic national development plan. By now we have Plan 12. Yeah, every 5 years, it still never stopped. It still continued until now. Okay. So it set up the Ministry of National Development. Okay. To take care, and implement and follow up, on all development plans. Okay, now, so who started this project, this idea? Is the World Bank and the U.S. advisors. Okay, this is the advice given by the U.S. government. Okay, but the U.S. try, and the people, advise, tell people, to stop, don't support the state enterprises, you should allow, competition by free market, let the private and the company to come in, but no, because people wanted to make Thai economy, strong under Thai so-called, merchants, and as Thai merchant not strong, then the government, take care and did it before, and then transfer to private later. So this is the not free market. Okay, US didn't like it. Okay, after so it came, so it turned, to follow US everything. Okay, so it support foreign investment. Okay, and set up Board of Investment (BOI). Okay, so start, giving, investment support to company, foreign companies who are coming in, So at the beginning, most of them were American companies, with favoritism. That means it gave special privilege, the tax cuts, tax holidays. Okay, you don't have to pay tax for 5, 10 years, or no tax on your benefit. Send back, to your country, your profit, something, which of course, make foreign companies, very happy. Okay, this is something that Chinese government now, never did. Okay, so that's why Americans are very mad with Chinese government, because no favoritism at all, unlike Thai government. Okay, so the first national economic plan started in 1961. Okay, so briefly, I give you the structures and how this the economic planning work. Overall, the idea is, to commercialize, agricultural production. Thailand is the agricultural production country. Okay, for 100 years, we good in agriculture, rice and all kind of farming, but that's the main production. But it didn't make much money, no value in terms of export, in terms of, okay. So in order to make the economic improve, they said you have to turn this agriculture into commercial practice. That means make benefit. Okay, if you have rice, then you have to export rice, in all our countries, And in order to export, you have to make it cheap, so that way you can control, the market, because people want to buy cheap rice from Thailand. Tastes good, but cheap. Well, you can sell anywhere. But actually, the real price in the world market is always higher than inside the country. So even you make it cheaper, it's still, the higher than the real value inside the country. Okay, because the government, tax, rice export, we call rice premium. Okay, so that the differences between the export price and the price that's selling in the market in the country, not too far different. Okay, otherwise people are gonna smuggle rice outside to make benefit. So the rice premium, it's a tax, put it away, the same like tax, they call premium. Okay, it should go back to the farmers because you tax them, okay, to make the competitive price for export. But no, the government, instead of give this tax back to the farmers, government use this money, a lot, every 100 million every year, because we export rice #1 in the world. Okay, that all this rice money, go to development plan. That means, spend on anything besides agriculture. Some will go agriculture, but many go to elsewhere to build roads, transportation, build ports, build scientific, build school, building hospitals. Okay, so this is the unfair practice to farmers. Okay, and next, once you got this selling your agricultural products, to get more cash, more money, then you use this money, to support industrialization in the country. Industrialization, to building more factories, you need a lot of investment money, and Thailand doesn't have that much money. So that's why the government must borrow from World Bank every year, borrow from World Bank to build dams, to build port, hydroelectric, to build roads, highways, or something. You have to borrow money. But if you don't borrow, then you have to get money from selling your in agricultural food. Okay, so this also, kind of, take advantage of the farming sectors or the laboring people in the country, get the benefit from them, and then put into industry. And industry always, belong to the capitalist or the government or foreign capitalists. Okay. And next is building what we call infrastructures, roads, and improve canals, or seaport, all kinds of transportation, railways. Okay. So after this infrastructure for transportation, then next is education, because new technologies, new economy need more education, people to know how to handle, new economies. So education improve, and American also, suggest that you have to improve, expand education, make it up to universities. So expansion of universities, came after American funding, okay, and give scholars. Many scholarships, were the so-called Ford foundations, Rockefellers, and the Fulbright, now still Fulbright, yeah. This gave to Thai students to study MS and PhD in America. So in the 1960s, 100 or close to 1,000 every year went to America. it become less now. Okay, yeah. Right, and this also will be important next, when we look at the development after Soviet, all the education expansion will bring, another impact to the Thai politics. Okay, next, because of this new expansion of economic activities, so the government in the member state need to come into control to regulate, how industry function, how export doing, control quality, manpower, more factories, you have more labor, so you have to make fair wages, and laborers always want to strike, negotiate for high wages. There are always problems coming in, So now the government, want to make sure that no problems. The government want to please the foreign investment. So they don't want the labor to be too strong. Laborers and workers, don't strike, do not strike, don't make trouble for the investors. So in order to make them look nice, the government come down with tough rules and regulations and law. Don't allow them to create labor unions. Yeah. And next, once the business going very well, who also want to come to do business with the new investment? The army. The generals. Generals do not have power. And they know everything because all the policy under their scrutiny, under their study and planning, or decision making. Not the representatives, to make decision on development. Mostly the government bureaucrats and the leaders, which is the army commanders. So the commanders start to look at, so why do we invest in this new business? We need more bank. So the military said, okay, we're gonna have Thai military bank. So that's why they can use this bank, to loan or to invest or to borrow money for the bank, for the army officer to buy land, to buy house, to do whatever they want. And then they expand to the new communication, which is television. Radio and TV expanded. People started the first TV, in the country, and so it improved it, So it became, more, expanded, more audience and more company want to come in advertisement, The army said, okay, we're gonna have our army TV called Channel 7. I think it still does now. So the government, under the army, own, television, make money from television commercialization, Not only TV, all radio stations also come under monopoly of the army, navy, air force. Everyone own couple radio stations. I don't think any country in the world, even nowadays, the government own or units of the government own your radio stations. Mostly they will let private, run the radio station, We get commission, you get permission from the state, Government, own the wavelengths, but to make entertainment or education program or something, it's better let the private person to do it. But in Thailand, it monopolized by army, by military, up until now, yeah. And next, private ownership of land also increased, but mostly in the hands of the armies, people, and their cousins, relatives, That's because the government now regulate land, the forest. They make certain land, forest to become national park, and then evict, get rid of the villagers who stay, cultivate their land for long term. Said no. Now it become national land park, so no one can own or cultivate here. But the army went in and building their own golf course, their own, resort or lend, to the logging companies to do forest. Okay. All right. Yeah. So this is how the economic development looks like in Thailand under Surit. Okay. So overall, we can say that for 5 or 10 years later, the picture became quite clearer that the so-called development, end up to be unequal development and unequal distribution of wealth and resources among the people in the country. Okay, because the policy of that the economic plan, the policy of capitalist development is one-sided. Okay, they aim at GNP, GDP, gross national products, to look at the statistic, at the number, how much import, exports, and government get, instead look at the quality of the people, who perform or who cultivate their production. No, that's not in the plan. The plan cannot evaluate, people's life, but they can do, number of export, import, or increasing of the values of, money spending. Okay. And okay, people who favor that kind of development, were the industrialists, people who live in cities, because city will get all infrastructure, get everything, electricity, water, TV, radios, roads, trains, and new life. So the big city become big and bigger. Okay, a small one become mid-size. You have big business, running all this. Okay, and in the countryside, in the rural area, in the provinces, the growth did not go up, very slow, sometimes went backward. Okay, people came to work in the cities, and especially in Bangkok. Bangkok become the mega city, that means a huge, super large city in the country or in the whole Southeast Asia. Okay, I mean the differences between Bangkok and number 2, the second biggest city in Thailand is huge, Okay, so widen the gap between rural and urban. Okay, you have more poor people. Okay, increasing. Why labor is cheap, farmers are poor. So that's the result of this unequal development. So the impact, okay, in terms of social political impacts of this kind of unequal development. So they created the kind of different views of politics, between rural and urban populations. Okay, one side needs help. The rural people, always need help. They cannot help themselves. They are too poor. They lack electricity, no water, no proper water, no enough irrigation. Okay, so everywhere the people always, kind of crying for help. Cannot help themselves. The other side, people in the city, okay, they have capital, they have more money, but they want promotion because they don't want to compete with American commodities, American import. Okay, so they want to government to get more of industry in the country, inside the country, to go more to compete with outside. Okay, so these two group of people, have different worldviews, different idea, different political support. Okay, the Bangkok people want to support government parties. The rural people want to support any candidates that close to them, that sincere or that really work for them, no matter what party they belong. Okay, but that will be changed too. Okay, so under this kind of economic policy and political orientations, once the problem that accumulated under this government, they hardly solve economic social problems, because they don't have the grassroots movement, they don't have the real, understanding of the real problems inside the area, the community. Okay, so every government until now, the way they solve problems, they just simply created new committees, new government agency, okay, to handle and recommend the government to do this, and take 5 years and people forgot, what's the problem. Okay, so we just live, like, okay, try to be alive, and next day, you forget, your problem. Okay, right. So I'll come to my last slide. I call it Thailand, land of paradox. Paradox means, the coming of the opposite, something that should not, come stay together, okay, it's unlikely, but so we have two versions of democracy in the country, okay. One is international or universal, someone called Western, okay, and the other we call Thai style, or half baked, half fruit, or semi democracy, okay. Two cities of democracy, one for the rural and one for the urban or for the cities. Okay. So when the government is bad, under parliament election, the MPs always created problem for the government. So they blame, the bad side of democracy or parliament, that, oh, this is the result of the rural provincial people that elected these, trouble, politicians. Okay. So when they make a coup against they call corrupted government, they said, okay, because the city people, want improvement, want the economy back, want to open market. So that's why the government, if we still have, quarrels, in the parliament, in the parties, we never govern. So we have to make a coup, get rid of the bad politicians. Okay, so these two cities of democracy inside Thailand. This is another version that academic call, Thailand. It's modernized. You have all kind of, Western, physical capacities, hospitals, modern hospitals, electric cities, cars, trains, airplanes, TVs, everything, But in terms of the quality, it's still undeveloped. Okay, so the best sample of this modernized but undeveloped is Thai education. Okay, we can have the Olympic, students, okay, but came to compete, got the gold medals in Olympic competition, only 5 of them. But the rest, 25 million Thai students, cannot even read or write correctly, cannot speak English, cannot read English, cannot do proper education. They're undeveloped. So we have the base, small base, tiny, base, but the big rush of undeveloped, population, okay, in the country. All right. So finally, I'm gonna live, with this, that the country now open to the wider world of changes and progresses. Okay, the Thailand open because of solid economic development, around foreign investments, open for export, So of course, the country had to be changed. Okay, but inside the country, the political system and the government and its values and beliefs are more and more backward looking. Okay, they become more conservative and afraid of new real changes. Okay, so given that political social atmosphere, okay, we're gonna see the new movement the new wave of people. We call it the youth, the new youth of 1970s. Okay, so why they work new generation? What they're gonna do? We're gonna look at and talk at it in the next, I think, the so-called week 13 lectures. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this one for now. Okay, so see you next time.